it keeps, if you look at the analog signal, it keeps moving, it varies from any level to any level. But the same analog signal should have to be represented by using a, sampling and quantization techniques. Okay, how that can be done, that's what I am trying to say here. Okay, so when the intensity varied from 0 to infinity in an analog image, okay, it should be represented in the digital format by looking at the intensity level and sampling at some factor. Okay. So this process, what we call it as a sampling and quantization. So, okay, sampling here it is digitizing the coordinate values. We call it as a sampling. I think these are all very very familiar words. All of us are very aware. In your engineering we have done a lot of such things. Okay. So similarly, it is true even at the digital image processing. Okay. And the digitizing the amplitude value is called quantization. I am trying to quantize a particular instance of light. Okay, where it can stand. Suppose if I am trying to represent the image using a grayscale, it typically varies from 0 to 255, where actually this particular light stands. Okay, 0 to 255, where actually this can be stand. Based on that, we are trying to make a quantization. Let us look at. Now, this is what a very general slide which can typically shows. Okay, so if, in this case the image is being represented using a grayscale. Okay, it varies from 0 to 255 and depends upon the intensity of the light. We are trying to represent with a grayscale. Okay, so that's how generally any image is converted as a digital image. Okay, suppose if I have an image of 10 by 10. Okay, perhaps it's very clear to me that I have 100 pixels. Okay, if I have an image which is represented using a 5 by 5, it's very clear to me that it is quantifiable. Okay, so then when I am clear with number of pixels, then obviously I can take a decision looking at the pixel intensities or looking at the pixel quality. I can able to take certain decisions. That's what the logic behind this image processing. Okay. If you have a complete image which is being represented using some quantifiable elements, then quite obviously I can start processing. Okay, the processing is something which there actually you need to do a lot of engineering here. Okay, so because especially in the medical diagnosis, see every doctor has a different opinions. Okay, if you take two doctors, two doctors will have a different opinion with the same problem. Okay, even though we have a domain is same, but if you bring two doctors into the picture, okay, every doctor has got its own, his own opinion on a particular problem. So because the world is ambiguous, it's quite ambiguous. Okay, very uncertain it is. It is not a monotone. It is a non-monotonic in nature. Every instance of light, we keep changing our own decisions. I think you must have come across, every day-to-day life, I do my decisions on that particular instance of time. Some of the things, knowingly or unknowingly, we do make decisions and our decisions will keep changing. I don't know, if I say, my presentation is over, you start deciding yourself, what next, where I should go after that. But as of now, I have not decided. Okay, at that instance, as a human being, we try to make decisions at that instance of time. There are a lot of such things which happens, okay, on your day-to-day life. Okay, that is how actually it is uncertain. Okay, that's why the research is still alive. We cannot do a great thing. We can do what best we can do it from our side. Okay, so that's why we are trying to understand in a better sense how best we can make the system to be more intelligent enough to understand. Okay, we cannot because if you look at previous the deliberations, the previous resource persons are very clearly told. No machines can really replace human beings. Human beings are an ultimate. It's one of the molecular design mission. It's one of the finest molecular design mission ever in the universe. Okay. So people, I don't know how my brain works. I don't know. Okay. So we'll come to that sometime later. Okay. This is how generally the image is being captured and sampling and quantization is being done in the system. systems. And how do you convert? If I take a one-dimensional signal, something like this, waveform, okay, I run my Dirac signal, delta signal, which will try to pass through the image and try to sample it at some particular frequency and try to make it a signal as a digital format. Okay, so if you just go through from right from the beginning till the fourth image, I can understand how the analog signal is being converted. I can able to understand the coordinate axis and also look at the amplitude. Depends upon the intensity I am trying to quantize it. And of course, it is similar to the previous one. If you take a slice of a particular image, if you look at this, see, I am trying to have a slice of this, okay, and this slice is represented using a frequency representation. You take a profile of this particular slice A to B, okay, so there is variations in the intensity levels. Okay, this slice is represented using this particular intensity profile. Okay, I am trying to convert this into a digital format. I am trying to represent using a quantization level 0 to 250. Okay, so that's generally it happens in the computers. Alright, so if you have a dense sampling, if you make it the factor level is less, then quite obviously your resolution is going to be increased. Generally for any image, okay, I think the resolution we have with 1048 by 786 or whatever it is. Now if you keep increase your resolution, quite obviously it requires more amount of memory and obviously it increases your computational complexity. Okay, there are other factors will keep rising up. Okay, so in that context actually we must have to understand where I can fix my resolution. Okay, how best I can represent my image. Suppose if you keep diluting, if you reduce your resolution, what happens is you are going to, you are going to lose out your information. So look at the previous slide here. Okay, suppose if I make my sampling a little bit more, then quite obviously I am losing some information there. Okay, so then if I lose my information, then your decision support will comes down. You cannot able to make a better decisions because my information is lost. Okay, there is an engineering there. I need to take an appropriate decision. How best I can make a quantization and sampling. All right. So and if you make a image is a coarse if you keep diluting, then quite obviously it gets into a low resolution. And I am losing some of the information which might be more important when you are supporting the decisions. These are some of the examples with the different grayscales. We have 8 bits per pixels to 2 grayscales. It's purely binary here. And I can understand from this. I am trying to lose out certain information based on the and similarly this is for the sampling. If you have a original signal and if it is sampled by a factor of 8, quite obviously it's blurred. It's going to be blurred because I have lost my information. Okay, so this one more digital image which is represented using a color components. Okay, as all of us are aware, usually the color components are represented using two scales. One is R and B and G. RGB is the color space. I have different channels altogether. Okay, all these channels will give you a different set of information. Okay, when you are processing, I can take out my color component or color particular red channel and process it. Now, but how do you figure out, whether you need to have a red or green or a blue? That depends upon the domain of your image. Okay, there are certain images which have a prominent role in the red component, and there are images which have better components, better representations with the blue components or blue channels. Okay, whichever the channel you wanted to highlight, you can just push it out or pull it out and start processing that. Okay, usually, in case of color representation, we have a vector representations where each channel will be represented in one particular vector. A pixel is represented using a 3 different set of values. Okay, those values are being represented with a vector. Okay, look at this. There is a different channels altogether. Okay, we have RGB, different channels will have a different information present. When you club it together, when I merge, I get a real image, right? Okay, so this is a very brief introduction, which generally any image processing will try to represent. Okay, we have a image acquisition and then followed by image enhancements. We have image restorations and we have morphological processing and segmentation. But it doesn't mean that everybody has to follow the same set of phases. Okay, you can skip. It depends upon depends upon what domain you are working on, and you accordingly you can select some of your phases and you can move forward. Okay, so perhaps what is important here is how do I represent my image? Okay, how do because in the last classes, in the last presentations, okay, it was very clear that the features that you extract from the image will play a very crucial role. Okay, the more research can happen at the feature extraction level. Okay, because every feature will have a better sense of information. How best a particular feature makes a better distinction from one class to another class. Okay, that's more important for features. Okay, if you take an example, suppose I am trying to recognize. I have a model, which is trying to differentiate between Rama and Krishna. Now, what is the best feature you select? If you look at it in a very broader way, okay, I have a model. The model is trying to make a distinction from Rama and Krishna. What is a very vague feature which you choose? Yeah. Yeah, that's Krishna. See, everybody will have a different way of perception. Woli is telling he has a peacock feather located on his head. That's one of the best clue which can have a better distinction compared to Rama. And somebody was referring Krishna holding the wheel. Okay. And one more important feature is color. Usually the Krishna is represented with a dark compared to Rama. Okay, because these features will have a better impact on making a better distinction. Okay, if you have a multiple features, like everybody are quoting one of the features. Okay, but I can rate my features. Which feature will have a more strength? Okay, I can say sometimes somebody say that the color is a very prominent feature. I can rate out of 10, 9 is color. Okay, somebody is telling the feather is one of the feather of a peacock is one of the prominent. I can rate it is say 7 out of 10. Okay, and the arrow and bow which Rama typically holds, for him it is the 9 out of 10. I can rate these features and I can decide which features to go with. Okay, likewise, there are n number of features. There are n number of features I can extract, but you can decide which are the prominent features will make a better distinction to make a classification of those objects will helps me. Such features can be taken in for the processing. Because if you have more number of features, your model complexity gets increases. I need not have to have n number of features because unnecessarily I am overloading my model for the computations. Your complexity getting increased, and your the processing time gets exponentially rising up. Okay, so to avoid that, what I need to do is I can select very smart features which can make a better distinction and to represent a particular image. But as I was trying to tell you is, it need not be followed all these steps. Okay, say suppose if the image is more clear, I need not have to do the pre-processing. Okay, but in medical imaging, the pre-processing is one of the primary and important phase because because the medical image what you capture it inculcates a lot of noise. There is a lot of it is more more general that the noise is getting when you are capturing certain images. I think we will get to know all that, right? So these are all some of the general procedures which will typically follow. And of course, there are a lot of modules or phases which which are being already dealt. My fellow friends are already addressed all these things. We will see how we can make it more distinct. Okay. So after that, I thought let me take up now this spinal radiograph reconstruction. Because this is one of the research problem which we are working on. One of my research scholars is working on this. We are in a very preliminary stage. We are trying to reconstruct 3D reconstruction of a spinal spine of a human being. Because we are trying to address the scoliosis. The scoliosis is one of the disease generally found with the human beings. I think scoliosis is something like a bent spinal. Okay, because it's very difficult to understand for a doctors to give a diagnosis, to give a treatment. Okay, so and one reason why we actually taken up for a 3D reconstruction is most of the time, if you take an X-ray of a spine, okay, it is represented with only a 2 dimensions, and the spine happens to be in a different dimensions. So it's quite difficult for a doctor to diagnose it. So I thought we thought let us have a 3D reconstructions to help the doctors for scoliosis disease. Okay, let us see. Now I try to throw some preliminary information. Perhaps these workshops and all we cannot. Anybody can't learn great things out of this. These workshops will help anybody to understand and get motivated. That's more important. People will get motivated and should carry forward further. Okay, some of the good things. Okay, that's how actually it will helps. In the similar way, we will try to throw some light on important issues, and hopefully that will be more useful. Okay. All right. This is a very generic medical image. We have people have really addressed all these issues, and we are focused on X-rays, and we need to do a pre-processing, as I was told before, because the X-rays are mixed up with a lot of noisy things. Obviously, these noisy things need to be removed and eliminated to figure out the spine. Alright, and that is to improve the image data quality and to sharpen the image and to reduce the noise, to remove the artifacts, okay, and to display it graphically. Okay. And we have followed some, what I am telling here is these are some of the methodologies we have followed. It doesn't mean that only these methods you need to use. Okay, so that's why I was told in the beginning. Okay, there are a lot of techniques, there are a lot of methodologies, but ultimately, what I need to decide based on my problem definition. Okay, so your definition might be different, and your algorithm will be different compared to what I am doing it here. Okay, so that's what the research is. Even though there are a lot of people who are working on a spine deformity analysis, but still there is a research. Still there is a scope, because everybody's perception is something different. Okay, and there are a lot of engineering we can do. We look at from the engineering perspective. The doctors will look at from their perspective. But ultimately, these things should be mapped. Okay, we should really have to come to some conclusions. Okay, wherein it can be used for a decision support. But ultimately, anyway, this model is not going to replace any human being. It's only a support system, decision support system. Okay, this support system might enhance, enhance the doctor's decisions. It will be, the doctors will be more clear on their decisions. Okay, it can support their decisions. Okay, that's how I can interpret. It's something like an expert system. Most of the time, these expert systems helps the doctors to make or to justify their decisions. Okay, that's how these expert systems are useful. Okay, some of the geometrical transformations which we can do because we are trying to reconstruct the 3D, we need to rotate it and translate it and shear it, whatever it is. Now we have to do some of the geometric transformations. Okay, some of them may be, they're all very fundamental, the basics. Okay, so this is how it looks. If you look at the original image and translated image, and we have a rotation image, we we have scaling it up, scaling it down, depends upon the requirements. I can also shear it, if necessary. Okay, so these are all some of the basic geometrical operations which we can perform on any image. It is not that it's only for a spine. You can do it for any image. Then, quite obviously, I need to contrast the intensity levels. Okay, stretch it wherever it is necessary. But if you stretch it, sometimes the noise level is also gets increased. Okay, we'll have to be very careful. I need to eliminate the noise before we stretch it, so that you can pass your image through filters, maybe median filters or Gaussian filters, wavelets or whatever it is. You just fine tune it. Okay, you try to surpass or filter the noisy things and then go for a stretching. Okay, the stretching is look at here. This is from this part to this part. I am trying to stretch it because that is the part which typically consisting of my information. Okay, my information is available there. Okay, as far as this graph is concerned, it may not be true in this case. I am just giving you some insight about that. Okay, why I am stretching this part is because most of the information lies in these pixels. Okay, I am talking in the sense of spatial domain. Okay, when I take my data onto the two-dimensional space, I can handle each and every pixels there. Okay, now if I want to, the transformation is something like that. Transformation, it doesn't mean that I need to stretch only the intensity levels. I can do any transformation. Transformation may be I can add some images, I can delete, I can remove some of the information, or I can even rotate it. Now, these are all some of the transformation I am trying to do it there. Okay, so transformation means if a pixel value is say 20, okay, if I add 50 to that, it becomes 70. Obviously my contrast is getting increased. Okay, that's the transformation. I'm trying to do the transformation. Okay, that's what the meaning of transformation here is. The T represents there, it is a transformation. Okay. Okay, this is something about before stretching. What is the situation of a spine and after stretching? I am little bit clear about the information. Okay, and similarly, one more component is histogram. To start with, any image processing will start with their histogram analysis. Most of us will do all that. It's all very basic. That's what I am trying to tell. Most of the people will try to do it. If necessary, do it. Otherwise, not required. Okay. So in this case, the histogram analysis will try to use the probability density function. Okay. This will try to understand the neighborhood of what is the likeliness of the neighborhood pixels and try to push it. Try to distribute equally. Okay. So it is not that this is the original image. I am trying to transform into a clear distribution of my image. Okay, so that's how this histogram equalization will try to help me out to make a better understanding or clarity of the image. Okay, so if you take an example, it looks something like this. Okay, so it is little bit stretched. Look at the original histogram here. I think all of us are aware. This represents the image pixel values. Okay, this is the total count of that particular pixel. That's what the histogram says. Alright. So this, suppose this is a grayscale. This varies from 0 to 255, where actually the highest number of pixels available in this image, it is somewhere in the 150. Pixel number 150. That's the 150 having more number of pixels in a given image. That's what the histogram talks about, right? So I am trying to spread these pixels across the image so that it has a better visibility. Okay, so that generally histogram talks about that, right? And I cannot blindly spread it. That's also important because that's where actually our probability density function will try to understand. Okay, so what is the likeliness of the particular image pixels and you spread it. Okay, image matching here. That's also using specified the density functions here, okay, which will try to understand the neighborhood. You know, especially in the image understanding, the neighborhood pixels play a very important role. So it happens even in a very general tendency. Look at that. You know, if you take a snapshot of this particular the room, and if I want to make a separation of all ladies and gents, all ladies will sit at one place and gents sit in one place. It's a very generic. You know, it's a nature. Okay, so even it is true in case of image understanding. Okay, it is more likely, suppose if I have a bright image here, it is more likely there is a bright here. It is more likely there is a bright in the near neighborhood. Okay, that's more important to understand. That similar concept is also true in case of image processing. Okay, so look at the, it's a bimodal Gaussian function which is being used to understand the image and try to look at, that's how actually the image is being stretched here. Okay, so the image enhancement is also one of the important component which everybody will try to do that. Okay, so we have the low contrast image which quite obviously degraded by the noise. That's difficult to handle by the model. We need to enhance the image. Okay, we need to do the restoration techniques, which is quite difficult for the usage. So therefore, what we do is we try to use the solve the poor contrast by using some of the special domain techniques. Okay, some of the typical techniques that we use for image enhancement is we have contrast stretching, and we have image equalization, and we have local histogram and global histogram equalizations, and we have an institute. So, but one problem here is, see, if you do the global and local enhancement, we might be losing certain information. Okay, that is also, that's why we'll have to be more sensible when we are doing the even histogram or analysis or even at the enhancement. Okay, so there actually we are likely to lose some of the information. Okay, so typically this is more important in case of spinal reconstruction, because if I lose my edge information, I may not be able to identify my landmarks. Okay, identifying the landmark in the spinal reconstruction, it is very important. Otherwise, my reconstruction is going to be a poor. Okay, so in this case, actually, we have followed multi-scale mathematical morphology, where actually I am trying to use the use bright, the top hat transformation. Okay, the top hat transformation here, it is advanced version of dilation and erosions what we are speaking. Now, generally, most of the people will do dilations and erosions. Okay, so this top hat transformation, it is something, a mix of dilation and erosion. It's one more called opening and closing. Okay, we have an operation called opening, okay, which is with reference to dilation and erosion. Okay, so that is what we call as a top hat transformation. Okay, if I do the opening with a top hat transformation, okay, opening here it is the erosion followed by a dilation. That is what we call it as a opening operations. And we have a closing operation, that is something dilation followed by the erosion. Okay, that transformation will help me in this spinal landmark identifications. Now, because especially the top hat transformation, what it does means it will try to decompose the images into two parts, where actually one part will talk about the the dense, the image edges, and other part will talk about the noise. Okay, so in this case, the part one will look at here. So the part one is a opening which represents the gray level image, right? And in this case, the structural element is D. Now, your structural element can be anything here. Okay, because most of the time, the designing of structural element, we call it as a kernel. Your kernel coefficients play a very important role in the image understanding and filtering. Okay, so in this case, the D will keep changing, depends upon your requirement. Now, your structural element should be more sensible here. Okay. And here the part 2 will try to talk about the measurement of a local contrast in an original image. Okay. So, and it tries to amplify the difference between the gray level and the mean gray level. Okay, so this tries to amplify an edge, okay, with a k amplification factors. Okay, the main intention why I am trying to do this is, now my edges need to be boosted. Okay, so that I can just point out where my landmarks are available. Okay, that's the intention. It makes the brighter bright and darker darker. Okay, that's what is trying to do in a multi-scale transformation. Okay, so look at that. The last statement here, the transformation makes the bright features more brighter. Okay, whereas the dark features more darker, so that I can have a very clear edge information. Okay, once I get a very clear edge information, I can able to figure out where my landmarks are for the reconstruction. So in this case, actually the same previous equation which is represented with a k factor of 0.5. Okay, whereas MO of D will try to, as I was told you, D talks about the structural element here. Okay, and this will try to give you the opening to enhance the brighter features, and the other components here, it will try to enhance the darker features. Okay, as I was told you, the opening will try to enhance the brighter components, and closing will try to suppress the darker, means more darker. Okay, here the factor, amplification factor is going to be considered as a 0.5. Of course, even we can vary the factor, k factors, and try to look at the performance with the model. Okay, this is the implemented results what I am trying to show you. Okay, so this is this is a original image, and this is enhanced image with with a maybe contrast stretching, and we have a bright top of transformation, and this is a dark top of transformation. As I was told you, this bright top hat will try to use the opening operation, and the dark top hat will try to use the closing operation for the transformation. Now, if you look at the D and C, okay, it's a very clear distinction about the edges here. I can able to trace where my edges are there. Okay, so by doing the top hat transformation, I can able to enhance the the edge information. Okay, so that's where actually this the transformation is more useful in the image process. Okay, obviously the edge enhancement is done using a contrast, the limited adaptive histogram equalizations. Okay, it uses a bilinear interpolation to eliminate the artifacts, and the noise removal is done. Okay, so these are all some of the generic steps which we are also followed with a different technique also altogether. Okay, that's where the research is required. You can come up with your own algorithm. Now, how it can be best addressed, right? So generally, some of the things which are not true in a real sense. Okay, now I cannot make the model to be more intelligent. I can make it to some extent it is intelligent. Okay, so that's why yesterday Ganshetty sir, he was telling, can you tell me which algorithm you use for some to go home or whatever it is. Okay, but it is quite difficult as a human being to tell what is an algorithm it is I am following it. Now, most of the time the human beings will have it's a non-algorithmic way of functioning. We don't have any specific algorithms. It's a non-algorithm. I don't know how I follow. I don't know how I take my decisions. Okay, it purely depends upon a particular instance of time. So that's why I am trying to tell you this whole world, it's a very non-monotonic in nature. Okay, there is a lot of uncertainties. Okay, so I make my decisions based on the current situations. Alright, so that's how I can understand. Now, these models play a role based on certain constraints. Okay, with reference to some constraints, I can build my own expert systems. Okay, this is how I can come up with a the edge information to understand my spine. To figure out where my the landmarks of. So similarly, some of the samples of vertebrates are taken. Okay, this is the X-ray of spine, and this is my original image, and this is the morphologically enhanced image, and this is the edge image. Okay. This is after doing the processing. This is how it looks. Okay, so once I do the enhancement, how do you make a segmentation? That's why I was told the segmentation is important, because I am trying to fix my the region of interest. That's what Sridhar he was referring. The segmentation play a very important role in fixing of my region of interest. Okay, where I am interested in. Okay, otherwise whole my feature extraction and the classification model is going to fail. Okay, so of course he has also addressed snakes. That's what I was trying to tell. Some of the most widely used models for active contour is the snakes. Okay, and of course there are other active contour models are available. Okay, especially these active contour models are more preferred for a medical image analysis, because every pixel makes a matter. Every component in a medical image makes a lot of information. So therefore, so these are all very active the models which are more preferably used for a medical image segmentations. Okay, and actually they also worked on a density based applications. Because why we go for this model is it doesn't require any prior knowledge of image. It will start keep searching for the necessary image and then move forward. Alright, this active contour models was proposed early in 1787 by a Cos. Okay, he gained a lot of popularity during that time because it was altogether a new technique at that time. Right, this was purely based on an energy functions. Okay, and of course it is a parametric model in which the name itself will try to understand the neighborhood pixels and the density of the pixels and move forward. And of course it is consisting of a lot of energy evaluations and then move forward. Okay, and of course this is a energy minimization problem. We can also have the energy maximization, but in this case we are considering it for an energy minimization problem. Okay, so in this case the medical segmentations are being done using a snake algorithm. So I don't talk much about that because it was already discussed before. And of course we have closed contour around the pedicles are being identified, and top and bottom pixels are easily identified here, and it's purely based on a feature which are more correspond to the local minima in the energy generated by processing the image. Okay, so we have a different set of energies altogether. Now we have a intrinsic energy and we have extrinsic energy, and it will try to identify based on the energy levels and try to move forward. Okay. So look at this. This snake model. This is my edge. This is my edge. Okay. So you draw a random edge across a random circle across the region of interest, and how it gets converges, where exactly the edges are available. Okay, it depends. It will try to evaluate the energy level at the outside the edge, and also try to find out the inside edge energy, and it gets nullified at some point of time. Okay, that's why I am telling you, this is the energy minimization problem. Okay, when it converges to the minimum, okay, it will fix the edge. It will try to fix the edge at that point of time. Okay, this is how generally it works. It will try to identify it will try to find out the intrinsic energy here and extrinsic energy at the outside, and it will try to make the minimization. Okay, looking at the energy components, and perhaps the energy will try to drive the curve where exactly it will fit in. Okay, the complete the converge happens by looking at the energy driven models here. Okay, so this is it starts deforming and moving towards the desired object boundary Okay, this is how actually generally the snake algorithm will try to do. Of course, as I was mentioning, I just run through some of the slides here. We have two parameters in a given function here, S and T, where S talks about the space parameter and T talks about the time parameters. And the internal source of energy is being consisting of the model tension and the stiffness. Okay, so because it has got some of the elasticity property. It was induced an elasticity, and how best it can flexibly move around. Okay, so those properties will help to identify, or it helps to drive the curve to fit in exactly at the edge level. Okay, and similarly, we also have a image forces which will try to drive the model towards the silent features like edges. And of course, in this case also there is a lot of the probability density functions are being used here. Okay, so these density functions will help you to identify the energy levels and move forward. Okay, so in this case, see, look at the alpha of x will try to understand the elastic bond, and beta is being used at the stiffness bond. Okay, the first order term makes the snakes contact with an elastic bond by introducing the tension, and second order term will try to produce the stiffness, wherein actually it should exactly fit in there in the edge point. Okay, so adjusting the weights of alpha and beta, which controls the relative impedance of the tension and the stiffness term. Now I can have a trial and error selection of the alpha and beta terminologies, and you just fit in, because I am trying to use the Laplacian values here. When you go for a two-dimensional, yesterday SVG was referring. Okay, if you as and when you keep moving towards the more instead of having a lower surface level information, if I go into the depth, okay, I keep looking at the noise more. Okay, if you look at the edge detection using a Laplacian operator, Laplacian will takes the second derivative. Obviously it is more likely the noise will also gets induced into the edge. So therefore, we'll have to be more sensibly adjust your alpha and beta values here. Okay, there are two potential energy functions are being used here. Okay, so in this case, the G of sigma talks about the two-dimensional Gaussian function with a standard deviation, and this is a gradient analysis. The gradient operator is being used along with the convolution. Okay, suppose if the image features are lines, then the potential energy function is going to be something like this. Instead of pixel, we take a line. Okay, it will try to have a closed circle. It will try to have a closed circle and try to make a boundary within the given region of interest. And that's how actually it keeps moving towards the image and the region of interest, and make it a selection. So here actually how we can derive again by using Euler-Lagrangian properties. Okay, we can come to this level. Okay, and the solution is found by discretizing the equations. Okay, and solve the discrete systems iteratively. Okay, so perhaps this will try to give the stiffness, and this first term talks about the elasticity property. That's more important. I think this will give you a little bit insight about how actually converge, how it comes to a minimum optimized problem. Look at here, the part of this is zoomed here, and look at the arrow here. It will try to the intrinsic energy will try to converge from the other end, and extrinsic energy will also converge from the other side, and it will try to minimize. This negative will try to minimize at a 0 and try to fix the edges. So that's how the snakes will work. And of course the drawbacks, there is a research scope here. Some of the drawbacks are extremely sensitive to the parameters S and T what we are referring there, and it has a small capture range, and there are no external forces act on a point, and converge is depends upon the initial position of your selection. And some of the experimental difference. See, one of the drawbacks with the lice snake is it cannot able to identify the concavity of this. Now look at this. I am expected to look at this edge, but it has ended up with somewhere here. It cannot able to converge this particular wherever there is a concavity lies in the image. This fails. But to overcome those difficulties, there is one more technique called a gradient vector flow. Okay, this is also it purely depends on the gradient analysis, and the snake is further research to overcome those concavity problems, and this will try to detect the shapes with a boundary concavities, and it will try to larger capture the range of it. Okay, and of course this is again the extension of the snake algorithms what we have discussed. And of course the primary aspects of the gradient vector flow here is it has a mapping function. Okay, it will try to understand the vector field with a representation of intrinsic and extrinsic energies, and try to have the minimization energy at some point of time by mapping using a edge mapping functions. Okay, so this is most of these derived by using a Lagrangian form. So this, as I was told, this field can be obtained by using equations like this, and of course the mu delta talks about the Laplacian operator, and the reason why we go for it is boundary concavity addressing. Okay, so these concavities are being addressed with this Laplacian operator. Okay, so if you look at the traditional representation of the snake, it looks something like this. If you implement using a gradient vector flow, it is finally able to detect the edge, okay, by using the intrinsic properties. Looking at the gradient flows, the gradient of an image, it can able to encache the concavity and try to fix it more appropriately. So if this is the traditional snake, if you implement, if the same image is analyzed using a gradient vector flow. Okay. I think there is a lot of scope for a medical image analysis here. If you have a gradient, further if you can maybe look at the trial and error of the alpha and beta values, you can able to fix it very appropriately. Okay, this is what the result. Okay, by using all that, I should be in a position to understand the landmarks, because my primary intention is to construct a 3D reconstruction of a spine. Okay, so in this case, some of these algorithms what we have discussed are being used to identify the landmarks of an image. Okay, so I think we have discussed these things. Okay. So typically, of course, we have also used candidate detection for lateral view and to figure out mark the two landmarks. And the qualitative evaluation is being done with a minimum distance algorithm and a hertz of distances. Okay, this is what the result. This is a gradient vector flow snake results. Okay, the first one talks about the snake initialization. We are trying to initialize the pedicle area, okay, where it will try to fix it appropriately, how exactly a pedicle looks like. Okay, this is the implemented version of that, which is more or less segmented. Now, once you do the segmentation, later point is to understand the features of it and go for the classification. But in this case, actually, why we are segmenting is to understand the landmarks. My intention is to understand the landmarks so that it will help me for a 3D reconstruction. Okay, and similarly, I can also understand with the the edge point, the corner points, by looking at the intensity profile of an image. Okay, this see, if you look at this edge, I can take an intensity profile of that, understand where my corner points are here, A, B, C, D, have 4 different corners. Okay, that will also give me the the landmark of a spine. I mean, for a pedicle. So this A is an active contour segmentation of a vertebral body, and this is an active contour with an identified landmark, and this is the function of intensity profile. Okay, similarly, for the lateral view of a radiograph, obtained with the centers of vertebrae. Okay. So other landmarks which can be identified similarly in the same set of operations that what we have done before. Okay, this is the final output. You can be visible here. Okay, so this is my spine. Okay, so each and every vertebrae are seen with a segmented pedicles, and this is possible only if I can able to understand my landmarks properly. Okay, otherwise the reconstruction is going to be a lot of Alright, the applications of snakes can be even extended with a lot of segmentation problems. It doesn't mean that only medical images can be used for the snake segmentation. I can also make use of even the gradient vectors for sensitive images. Okay, especially for images with a lot of sensible points, I can typically use it. Similar applications like motion tracking and stereo matching, shape recognition, etc. These are all some of the applications wherein I can use this algorithm. And of course, there are a few drawbacks which we have identified, as it is more sensitive because we take the higher dimensional profile, then quite obviously it is more sensitive even to the smaller noise. Okay, that's also one of the drawbacks, but we'll have to work out that. Okay, some of the references which we have followed for this reference. Okay, thank you. Any questions, any queries? I'm happy to take them. This is what is the summary we can have it here is this is only an our approach. What we felt we have followed, and there are a lot of scope to design your own algorithm. Okay, there is a lot of scope. Okay, even with the segmentations. So once you do the segmentation, even feature extraction, what we have discussed, there are a lot of research contributions can happen only there. Okay, especially in the classifications, of course, we have a different classifying models, maybe like neural networks or SVM or HMM. Okay, there any researcher may not able to give a lot of contributions, but the contributions can happen only at the image feature extraction level, or designing your own algorithm of innovative way of bringing up your own algorithm. Okay, so of course research is open-ended. That's how it generally happens, and we live even today. Okay, so if you have any queries, just take it. Otherwise, we'll just find out.
Whether here morphological operations are right, other than the gradient operators and the snakes.
I didn't get it.
Morphological operations, opening and closing.
Okay.
Especially this is one of the tool for the segmentation.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean that, sir, actually.
With respect to biomedical image.
Yeah, definitely. So actually, this opening and closing, it is a mix of dilation and erosion.
Yeah.
Okay, we are, if necessary, you can take it, because especially for a medical images, I think it is more useful. Because
apart from you can combine the snakes as well as this opening and closing.
Yeah.
I think the boundaries that some of the things were not got correctly by making use of this morphological operations.
Yeah.
I think those
we have followed, sir. Actually, we have used. I was told in the beginning, we have done the opening and closing with reference to the identification of the edges. Instead of using dilation and the erosions, okay, we have used opening for a top-up transformation. I think you are not there before. So we have done instead of going for a imaged enhanced transformations, we have done top hat transformation, which is a mix of it is a mix of again dilation and erosion, like opening and closing the operations. Okay. So we have a bright top hat transformation to enhance the edge components, and to suppress the darker, we have gone for a dark top hat transformation. That's again a closing operation. Thanks. It's a very critical time to watch and listen. Thanks for your patience, patient hearing. And I wanted to convey my thanks to the organizers, especially Oli, for inviting me to be a part of this workshop. It's a great it's my pleasure to be down here because we have spent a lot of good times, and we are all roommates. There are a lot of my roommates. So to recollect, to memorize, it's a good opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. I thank immensely Dr. Harish for giving a wonderful talk on fundamentals of image processing in connected to the 3D reconstruction of the spine. As being a biomedical engineer, I understand what is spine. It is so complex structure. One among the bone, which is so complex in the human body, is the spine. In all 3 dimensional, it has a curvatures. But if you look into the certain part of our skull and other things, you can find some flatness, other things. But if you look 3-dimensionally at the spine, it's a very complex curvature. So taking such a research project is very challenging. So I congratulate him for giving a wonderful talk on this particular topic. On behalf of the VTU, VGST Institute Department, on behalf of all of you, I thank Dr. Harish for coming here and giving an invitation talk. I request Professor T.D. Vishnumurthy sir to present a memento to Dr. Harish as a token of my respect.
Thank you. And of course, this is funded by DST. It is a DST funded project.
Just I will confirm whether the food is ready. We will not waste the time. I have another wonderful video. If you cooperate. Otherwise, it is your interest matters. Ultimately, I will just verify with the organizing here.
You know, if it is operated video, then we'll have food and come.